he says to me all the time, he's like, all of my sports knowledge that I've ever collected over my life, like everyone told me that it was just pointless, right? Like so useless. Like there was going to be no reason for it because he's not involved
Wow.
in the sports world. And even just the last show that I did, I mean, the whole time he was in my ear, like, "What about this? What about this? What about this?" And he told my middle sister, and she shared it with me. He was like, "All this time I thought that there was because so many people had told me, like, there was no reason to have all this. I just had it because I love sports and I wasn't gonna do anything with it. And now that I have a daughter who's in the field, working in the field, I have a chance to like share it and it feels purposeful now. And I think that is like a huge theme with my dad and I is both of us how we both just found purpose in one another.
The term girl dad became famous a couple days after my favorite athlete of all time, Kobe Bryant, tragically passed away. ESPN reporter Ellie Duncan revealed a conversation that her and Kobe had, and he explained to her that having girls was the best, and that if he could, he would have more girls. And that's where we learned that Kobe was the ultimate girl dad. It's a phrase that I pride myself for being. Today, I got to speak to someone who is a girl who is the daughter of a girl dad. And that's my guest today, Miss Jaycie Schenone. Jaycie interviewed me a part of the Galvanize series created by reporter Laura Oakman titled Who Not Do. And she was told to find out exactly who am I. And that's where we learn that we had this common bond. Me having a relationship that I have with my daughter and how she has a great relationship with her dad. So coming up, she shares her story about how her relationship with her dad influenced sports. But one of the also coolest things that she's done recently was she was a part of that production team of The Last Dance. So ladies and gentlemen, here's my interview with Miss Jaycie Schenone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on the line this week, I am so honored to welcome somebody who interviewed me a few months ago, and now we're going to flip the switch, and I'm going to interview her, and that is the one and only Miss Jaycie Schenone. Jaycie, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brian. It's great to be here. It's a true honor because I remember like right when Laura Oakman gave me your name and I went out on a huge search and thankfully you had so much content out there for me to absorb and it was all really great and being able to interview you really set off I feel like I was in a little bit of a funk before you and I talked and you and I had that interview, and ever since then, I've just been fueled by everything you shared with me on that interview. So I'm so honored to be back here and for you to be interviewing me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I was told sometimes that I post a lot, and I tell people, well, it's done by design in some ways. If somebody wants to look for something bad, which they won't find, because even in my before my career days when I was never really in the streets, but I used to hang out in Baltimore a lot. Um, I might have stayed out late just hanging with my friends and stuff, but you never catch a bottle in my hand on pictures online. That was always the rules.
No, no. I mean, if you have great content and you have great messages that you want to share with the world, like I appreciate a lot of content out there and putting it all out there on the line because it's hard. I mean, keeping up with social media is definitely social media and just like media in general. It's a challenge. And so if you're someone who has the messages that you have and the network that you have to interview, etc. I mean, I appreciate it. So thank you
Yeah,
for all you do.
no problem. So let's talk about you. When did you first fall in love with sports?
Oh, that goes back to when I was a really, really young girl. I had 2 older sisters, and they were significantly older than me, and my dad was their coach. So I was the ball girl for my sister's softball team when I was really young. And I just remember sitting there and like looking up at all of these girls that just looked so much bigger, so much older than me, and being like, I want to be them one day. And I think that formed a really interesting relationship with sports for me because my sister, like um if you met my middle sisters, so I have 2, and if you met my middle one, she's someone you would look at and you'd be like, "Oh, she probably never played sports in her life." Not just, like, physically, but, like, if you talk to her, if just knew her, it's
Hmm.
not something that you would instantly think that that was her past, but she was the one out of all 3 of us that went to state and won in the softball league with my dad as the coach. And once I was on that run with her, I was just like, sports are amazing. And this is so much fun. You just get friendships, you get taught lessons, you get to show up in a way for the world that I'd never seen anything like it before. But I moved away from them. So my mom took me and she moved me about 2 hours away for her job when my parents separated. And it was a whole new arena, literally and figuratively, from the Bay Area, which is where I grew up and where my sisters and my father were. And I just remember looking at her and being like, you're gonna move me here, like, you better get me involved in sports because I need that, really badly. And she tried her hardest to get me into the softball program, up there right when we moved, but I had missed the cutoff because of when we moved. The timing of it all didn't work out. So she got me involved in soccer, and I played softball and soccer all throughout my childhood. I really wish I played basketball because that's like one of my favorite sports to watch, but never I'm not tall enough for that. So never got involved in that. But soccer and softball were my thing. And yeah, there's a whole nother story of how I got involved into sports journalism, but sports had a really big role in my life. And I think they're just so important for our youth because it teaches them so many life lessons and how to be a good teammate and how to show up for yourself and to push your body past points that you don't think you can. It's a really big connector between the mind and the body, I think. So, yeah, sports are great. They're my
Yeah.
favorite.
Who was your first favorite teams to follow?
That's a good question. I think I followed baseball mostly because of my dad. So the San Francisco Giants are and will always be a huge team for me.
You lucky you got
Um,
3 rings.
oh yeah, and it was like the perfect timing for me because it was right when I could just absorb it all. Right, like it was
Mhm.
my formative teenage years when that happened. I hope I'm not putting my age out there, but it was great. It was awesome to be able to experience that run with my dad and go remember the parades. And it was the best time. But
Which
since
one was your
then,
favorite?
I think the first. I think the
Okay.
first because that was when like my dad and I really showed up and went to the parade together. After that, I kind of went with my friends. But the first year, he was like, "We're doing this together." I didn't. I still haven't been to a game in
Mhm.
the playoffs for the Giants, but one day I'm hoping that we can rebound and rebuild. And every year I hear from my dad's friends, "This is the year we're gonna make it again." And I'm like, "Okay, guys, like we're far off from that, but maybe one day." But yeah, so the Giants were, but then like Stanford soccer for me was
Okay.
super big. The women's team, we got to go to a few of their games when I was younger, and that was a moment where I thought to myself, like, "Oh, maybe I can do this past just like rec, just past
Mhm.
competitive." I didn't end up, spoiler, alert, didn't end up doing that, but my knees wouldn't have it. So, but still, it was awesome to see women and see them kick butt on the soccer field.
Can you talk about the bond you and your dad had? I love the story about one, on your show, you're talking about me being a girl dad, and that was something that you and I was able to connect on because you being
Totally.
your dad being a girl dad and seeing y'all bond. Can you talk about when what it was like to be with him when the Giants won that World Series? Because we it's one thing to watch sports with your family, right? But then there's the big moments. So for me, and I'm a huge wrestling fan, and when Kofi Kingston became the first African-born WWE champion, because The Rock was also a champ,
Mhm.
I was with my son, daughter, friends, and my dad. But so it's a moment you'll always remember. I've seen numerous title changes. I've seen numerous of my favorites win, but that was a special moment. Can you talk about being with your dad, watching the Giants win the World Series, and what that moment meant?
Of course. Yeah, I think all of those moments like you're explaining, like I think everyone has them, which is the best part about sports and the reason why I love them so much because it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. Like we are on opposite sides of the coast right now, right? It
Mhm.
doesn't matter even abroad. Like people just have those sports moments that connect family members, that connect husband and wife, that connect children and father and mother, etc. Like it's so cool hearing people's favorite sports moments, and I know my dad just has so many. And for so long, he says to me all the time, he's like, all of my sports knowledge that I've ever collected over my life, like everyone told me that it was just pointless, right? Like so useless. Like there was going to be no reason for it because he's not involved
Wow.
in the sports world. And even just the last show that I did, I mean, the whole time he was in my ear, like, "What about this? What about this? What about this?" And he told my middle sister, and she shared it with me. He was like, "For all this time, I thought that there was because so many people had told me, like, there was no reason to have all this. I just had it because I love sports and I wasn't gonna do anything with it. And now that I have a daughter, who's in the field, working in the field, I have a chance to like share it and it feels purposeful now. And I think that is like a huge theme with my dad and I is both of us how we both just found purpose in one another and how we share something that is so personal to both of us in so many different ways, right? Like not just the big time athletes, not just the big time um leagues, teams, etc. Like it's something that we love to do and finding that within each other has been so incredible, especially now because we were so far apart. I was in Sacramento, he was in the Bay Area, and the Giants winning the World Series was a moment where we had a reason to call each other every night,
Mhm.
right? Every time they were on TV, we were on FaceTime or we were on the phone with each other, even if they're like, we could not say anything for like 10 minutes or, whatever. We were just on the phone so that we were together. And that was something that pulled us together from such far distances. And I appreciate sports. And it's probably honestly a reason why I love it so much is because I saw like I wanna be close to my dad even though we can't physically be close to one another, and this is a way that I can do that, so I'm going to, and even now, like, I'm back in the Bay Area living with my family, and whenever I'm in Sacramento and he's here, thankfully he's moving to Sacramento soon, but anytime we're apart and there's a huge game on, like NFL on Sunday, like my aunt just knows, turn on the TV, leave Jaycie on the couch. She's gonna call her brother, my dad, Mike,
Mhm.
and they're gonna talk the whole entire day, basically. With her as long as she has a charger next to the couch that's plugged in with her phone, like they're gonna be talking and it's just been a source of comfort. It's been a source of growth. It's been a source of so many different things in my life. And with him by my side, and father daughter relationships are something incredibly special, like and it's incredible when you get to bond over something like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh man. Somebody cutting onions around here. When did you decide to jump into the business? You said you mentioned about playing soccer and
Yeah.
your knees wouldn't allow you to go further. When did you decide? Was there hesitation? Did you think about doing something else, or was it immediately you knew sports journalism was the direction?
There was the hesitation. There definitely was. It wasn't at the beginning, but it was definitely during the middle. I looked at myself and I was like, maybe this isn't for you because I'm someone who I'll tell it to you so straight. I give no care in the world to the stats, to the X's and O's, to any of that stuff when it comes to sports. And I care about the people. I care about the athletes. I care about how they got to where they are and what they're doing with it now, what they're still overcoming, and um, who they want to be and what inspires them. Like that's the stuff that I care about in sports journalism. So it's hard going to college and being a woman and just instantly being quizzed about your knowledge. And I never once tried to fake it. Like I didn't try to be the person and I wasn't going to and I knew that. So why set those expectations early that I was going to? I mean, I know a lot about sports, but my dad, I have nothing compared to my dad. If I have a question, he's the one I'm calling. He's the one I'm being like, hey, like who should I be looking at for this, right? Like what's the history on this? And he'll give it to me. But I don't want to sit in front of whatever I would need to, books, stats, whatever, and try to figure that out. So um it was hard in the middle of college. I was like, maybe I should look at like arts and culture or news or something along those lines. So I did a brief stunt at PBS, an internship at PBS, and I walked away from it like I miss it. I
Mm.
don't know I don't know if I can do anything else but it. Um, and I think that was a very formative decision that I had to make, and, I just had to commit to it because I knew that it had such a big influence on my life, but I didn't, I don't know, I think everyone goes through that though. Everyone goes through the, like, "If am I doing something wrong? Should I have taken this other road? Would it have led me somewhere else?" But I knew I wanted to get into the business when kind of a crazy story, but like I said, kind of teased my knee,
Mhm.
um, just completely fell apart when I was a sophomore in high school. And I tore my MCL and my ACL, and they were supposed to be really routine surgeries, but I had a huge complication and I almost lost my leg. So they almost had to amputate my leg because the infection that I got from the surgery just was it was crazy. And in the moment, I was like, "This is so normal." And now looking back, I'm like, "That was so not normal at all." But I read when I was laid up in my bed all of summer, going into my junior year of high school, I was very depressed. I was very anxious. I didn't know what I was going to do now. And I was just watching HBO Sports with Brian Gumbel, Real Sports. And I was reading and I looked at myself after I read this one article of a girl who had the exact same thing happen to her. She ended up actually losing her leg and she went on to do triathlons. And I was like, I'm never going to do triathlons, but I do want to tell these stories because the people that do go on to do triathlons are incredible.
Mhm.
And I want to somehow be someone that tells their story. I love writing and I want to do that for a living. So I went and tried to do it, and now I'm so grateful that I get to touch stories that are similar to that.
Yeah. So when you went to Oregon,
I did split
how'd
up.
you choose like which college you was going to, especially growing up as a Stanford fan?
Yeah. Well, Stanford's very expensive, and Stanford doesn't have, an undergraduate communications program. So I just did my research. I mean, I knew that I was gonna have to pay for my own college, and that was a really big decision that I had to make. So I did a lot of research. There was a great program really close by in Sacramento, Sacramento State, that I knew. I had a few teachers that went to, they studied communication. I thought that might be a good opportunity. But when I visited University of Oregon and I saw just their athletic program, I saw the communication school, I talked to a few of the professors there, and I knew that that was the place I needed to be. And I made that decision that I was gonna take it. I was gonna take the student loans and I was gonna do it because I felt in my heart that it was going to lead me to do what I wanted to do. And at the end of the day, it did. So I'm so appreciative of the School of Journalism and Communication there. They really invest in their students in a way that, I mean, I wouldn't know how anyone else does because I didn't go, but it was
Mhm.
exactly what I needed. So I'm grateful for that.
Any moments there that stick out?
Yeah, actually lately, and this isn't super focused on like my studies, but more of just a reflection on athletics as a whole and the pressure that we put on professional athletes. But I was at Justin Herbert's very first Oregon start game. And he was so, so, so nervous.
Mhm.
Reasonably so. I mean, he grew up in Eugene. University of Oregon probably was always in the back of his mind. He played several sports, but football was his number one. And he just started as a freshman for
Right.
his dream team, right? And held his own. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I can't even remember, but I'm pretty sure he won that game. And I remember sitting in the press conference after the game, and someone asked him, like, "Are you happy? Like, you don't seem happy. Like, are you gonna smile for us?" Like, was kind of just like poking fun at him a little bit, poking the bear and like trying to get some sort of reaction out of him as a media member. And he was just kind of like, of course I'm happy, but like couldn't give much more than that. And now looking at him and seeing not only how incredible he's doing with the Chargers, but also him in post, talking about his team and talking about himself and talking about like where he wants to take this program. It's pretty crazy being able to see the evolution of people and in athletics and what it brings to the table and the possibilities that it has. And really good people too, right? Not people that aren't deserving of it. I mean, everyone deserves what they've been given, but like someone who's just very authentically themselves and doesn't try to be anything else than that is are the stories that I love and something that I've just been reflecting on a lot lately of like that was awesome that I got to be in the room and to see now that evolution.
Yeah, that's amazing. You eventually, after college, you would find yourself at the worldwide leader, uh, ESPN. How did can you talk about your process? How did,
Yeah,
you, when you applied and got the call, can you talk about that in the interview process?
totally. Yeah. So I met with a director that was doing on site for Oregon football, and that must have been my senior year. So that was in the fall of my senior year. I met with him at just like a coffee shop the Saturday, or maybe early morning Saturday or late afternoon Friday, right before the game. It must have been Friday, and we talked, and we he was just a really great guy. And I remember because it was hard in college. I mean, I was pretty depressed my senior year, as a lot of people are, trying to figure out like what the next step is. You've been in the school system your whole life. You don't know if all of your hard work is going to pay off, if your dreams are going to come true, right?
Mhm.
And I talked to this guy, and I remember going and just being like, I don't want to do this. Like, I'm not in the right headspace to be having these conversations that are so important for my career. Um, but I did it anyways, and I went to this coffee shop, and we really hit it off, and we had a really authentic conversation. And he just encouraged me. He was like, just keep looking at the site. Like, I don't have any internship powers at all, but keep looking at the site and let me know if anything catches your eye, and I'll do some research and figure it out who would be the best for you to talk to. So I kept looking, and I just didn't really see anything that was right up my alley. I mean, they have a great program there for young professionals called ESPN Next, and that looked really intriguing to me, but I also knew that I didn't want to just be um a number in a control room. Like, I really want the reason I wasn't going into local television was because I really wanted to touch like big stories, big feature stories, and um really get to dive deep into an athlete, a story, tell a story no one's ever heard before. Like, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be involved in the production of the actual games at that moment. I mean, now maybe, but in that moment, that's I wanted to do feature stories. So I found the ESPN Films internship, and I was like, this is the one. This is the one that I actually would love to be a part of and love to do. 30 for 30s are amazing. My dad and I have watched them for the past 10 years. Like, this sounds like it's up my alley. So I submitted my application, or I was working on submitting my application and checking the site every single moment to make sure it hadn't gone down, because I wanted the right people to take a look at my application before I submitted it. Um, and I when I was going to submit the application, it was down. It was
Oh,
already
no.
gone. So I missed my window. I was so upset, so sad, and I emailed this lady that I'd been talking to in HR at ESPN, and I, like, gave her a full rundown. I explained I was on a trip over winter vacation in China, so I didn't have access to the internet, which was one of the main reasons I was so late in submitting my application. But
Mhm.
I wrote her this long email explaining everything, giving, just a rundown on who I was, what my resume was, um, all of my experience and the work that I had done. I laid it all out on the table for her, didn't hear back. And I was like, I was so devastated. I couldn't even like start looking at other jobs because I was like, that was the one, and I let it slip away. So a few weeks passed by since I had emailed her, and one of my advisors at my school just goes, "Did you follow up? Like, just say like, hey, I just wanted this to hit your inbox again and follow up." So I did, and she responded within an hour. And she's like, "Here's a portal for you to submit your application." She's like, "This is all great. I'm so sorry. I completely understand. I'm so sorry I missed your email, but I completely understand your situation. Here's a portal to submit your application." And it felt like I had just won the lottery. Like, I was beside myself, so happy, and I knew in that moment that I was not going to not let myself get this opportunity. Like, it just felt so right, and I knew that something was happening, the stars were aligning. If you believe in God, like, God had, like, shown me that this was the moment for me,
Amen.
and yeah, I wasn't gonna let it pass. So I went through the interview process, and I told myself, like, I'm just gonna be authentically me. I'm gonna own my story, and I'm gonna show them that I'm a storyteller by nature. And I'm gonna tell them the stories that I've told you here, right? Like, I'm just gonna be so honest about my relationship with sports, why I'm pursuing this career. I'm not gonna read from a script. I'm not gonna try to follow all the tips that interviewers tell you to do. Like, I'm just going to have a conversation with them, and I'm gonna try to be someone that they would want to sit next to in a cubicle, right? Because I think that's something so many people forget when they're doing these interviews is like, no, they're looking for the right person for the job, but they're also looking for someone they want to sit next to, someone that they, can just level with and be real with. So I took that into the interview, and I'm really grateful that I landed the internship and then I landed a full-time gig with them afterwards. And ever since then, I've just been trying to help my team at ESPN Films and help ESPN Plus Original Content, who has a group of such incredible people as well, working tirelessly to make our streaming service a place that has authentic stories, good stories, and um, yeah, it's been great. It's been a whirlwind, especially going into a pandemic, but ESPN's a special place. It's huge, and I know you spent some time there. It's it's great. I think the culture is finally starting to catch up with the world, and that's what we can only ask for. There's some incredible people that work there.
Now, did you
Um,
have to live in Bristol or you went to New York?
I lived in Bristol for my internship,
Uh,
and then
what was
I
that
moved to
process like for you?
I actually lived in a hotel. So we lived with all of the interns in a hotel. So I feel like I didn't actually get the proper Bristol like experience.
Hmm.
I've heard a lot about it. Living in Hartford or living close by to Bristol. It's just a town of all ESPNers is what I've gathered. And it's cool, but it's also its own bubble, right? So New York was definitely more up my alley and what I was looking for sure. I feel like I stroked some luck there being able to transfer after a few months to New York.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so my daughter was born in Bristol, so it's always going to have a special place in my heart.
And yeah,
But it was looking back at it, it wasn't that bad. But you said something key. You said its own bubble, which
yeah,
is funny now coming out of the NBA and the WNBA bubbles, because I think that's kind of the best way to explain it. Now, most of my friends, when they went from production assistant to content associate, the first thing they did when they got that raise was they went to West Hartford. Some people
oh
lived
yeah,
in New Britain or Waterbury, but for the most part, people lived in Bristol. And then as soon as they got that promotion, gone. Uh,
out of there,
yeah, but
totally.
the wings were good. I have to say that.
Oh my gosh. What is that place called?
J Tim's,
Timothy?
yep, J Timothy's.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I took my dad there the one time that, I brought him to campus. We went straight there afterwards. It's
Okay.
yeah, yeah, that's a good place. But another thing that I say to people that's a good, summary of Bristol, it's great, it's charming, but I say if you look it up on Google, um, you'll find ESPN. 2 things will come up. One of them will be ESPN, the other one will be the library, and that's it.
I mean, well, you still gotta give credit to the theme park.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Oh, yes,
I
that's right.
forgot the name of it that fast, but that's where Millie
Um
Vanilli got caught lip syncing. That's what they tell you during the tour.
Yes, they do a lot of events there. It's, like, right across the street from campus, right?
Yeah, did you get a chance to
Yeah.
go to the party? The
Yes. Well, I didn't go to the party, but they sent the interns there one day for, like, an intern day.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. A little bit like, are these rides gonna work? But it was good.
Yeah, when they did the annual picnic, I went, and luckily for me, I was on a Mike and Mike shift at the time, so
Mhm.
didn't have to ruin my day at all. Like me and my
Yeah,
friends, we all went with my wife and my friend Quincy's wife's and children, so that was pretty cool.
cool.
And I think, yeah, my wife was pregnant with my daughter at
Did
the
you
time.
meet your wife in Bristol?
Mm-mm. Here in Baltimore, and then
Oh, cool.
I moved to Connecticut first, got the job, moved up there, lived with my cousin for 3 weeks in what's that place? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank today. It's all the way up uh outside of Springfield. So it was
Okay.
way up 91. So
Yeah,
that drive for 3 weeks was like, ooh, but it was
yeah,
fun living with him. And then my wife and I got married that March and she moved up to Connecticut. So that's how
cool.
that was. And
That's
You know,
awesome.
and her job had sent her because she worked at a daycare center around the
Mhm.
corner from actually around the corner from campus, and they went
Cool.
to they also went to the place where we was just talking about the
Yeah.
so it was cool.
Yeah.
And that was another thing because, like, for me as a parent, like my son he was 5 at the time. So
Mhm.
I would go to like back to school night and I might see some other ESPN parents. So it was sort of
Totally.
its own bubble. Um, but
Yeah.
so you moved to New York once you got the job. What was that like? And what was it like transitioning from the West Coast to the East Coast?
Yeah, I think I honestly what I've realized about myself, especially during this time, is that I could live anywhere, which is really nice. To know that about myself. Like I don't think I'm a lot of people are very attached to places that they live, and I do think that I would love to just travel for most of my life, which is hard under these circumstances, but like I would love to travel. I used to tell my parents all the time when I was little, like if I could live in every single city for, a year and then make my decision. Like I used to tell them, I was like, I don't think it's fair to have to make a decision where we live without experiencing everywhere. So that's definitely my MO, and it wasn't that hard of a transition. I missed my family, and I really think quarantine made me realize how much I missed my family living on the West Coast. Um, Living on the East Coast, but now back on the West Coast during COVID season. But I think the actual transition, it was hard, mostly hard on the career front, going from college to a 9 to 5 job, which also Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, like it's very rare for ESPN. So I felt in some ways grateful that my schedule didn't change drastically because I think that's something that a lot of people have to get used to in the sports industry is shifting from like college or whatever you were doing before to looking at like weekends and you start work at 5 p.m. go till 5 a.m. Like it's crazy the schedules that people have at ESPN, and I don't think a lot of people know that going into it, just how much of your life you have to dedicate to the job. But it was good. I love New York. I wish I could go back there. I lived in Brooklyn and I really fell in love with Brooklyn and fell in love with the lifestyle. I come back to San Francisco and I'm like, how do you guys not have a subway? Like, how is that not something we have developed yet? Because it's so the systems there, they just work, and the people and the diversity there, it was exactly what I needed and exactly what I wanted. I wanted to just be able to get lost in a city and no one know my name and be able to be who I wanted to be. And I think New York really lends well to that, and it's why I don't think there's ever going to be a time where New York City does not thrive. No matter what they tell you, it is a beautiful, strong place that is going to rebound from all of this. So I loved New York.
Yeah. Now, we got to talk about you got a chance to work on the thing that got a lot of sports fans through COVID, The Last Dance. First of all, when did you find out you was going to get that opportunity and how did you feel? Cuz you are somebody who likes to tell stories and you got a chance to tell the story of one of I'm not going to give him the goat status. I'll say one of because multiple goats, but one of the greatest of all time, Michael
Yeah.
Jordan.
Yeah. It was incredible. It was incredible seeing it from, and it was something I shared on Twitter. I'm not very frequent on Twitter, but it was something that I did share of the only thing I could remember stepping out of my acceptance with ESPN and talking to the producer who would become my boss for a short period before leaving ESPN. She's incredible, Deirdre Fenton. She told me when I was accepting it, she's like, "You're gonna be able to work on the Michael Jordan project as your first project." And I remember being like, "Sorry, repeat that? What? What did you just say?" And she's like, "The Michael Jordan project, you're gonna get to be a PA for it." And that was the only thing I remembered. I ran to my dad. I was like, "I get to work on the Michael Jordan project, Dad." He's like, "What is that?" And I was like, "I think it's confidential, so I probably shouldn't have just told you that, but I get to work on it."
So
And
y'all didn't see
I
the
did.
trailer in 2018?
No, I didn't. I
Okay.
hadn't at all. So I didn't know what I was stepping into.
Mhm.
And I met Derwin Graham. He was the actual PA for it, an incredible guy and so deserving of that opportunity. But I helped him a little bit over the summer as an intern, gathering footage for him, helping him gather footage for the show. And it was crazy. And then I went on and was in New York and I was supporting the executive producer, Libby Geist, for the Michael Jordan project and seeing how massive of a project it was from that side of it, like the executive side. And a lot of people were at the beginning of it like, this might not be the best deal for ESPN. Like, we maybe shouldn't have gotten into this. And we're
Really?
just like, well, because it was a partnership with Netflix, and Netflix is one of our, massive competitors. And we were just like, we don't know if it's going to make a big enough splash. Like, it's a huge project, obviously. We all knew that. But like, trying to figure out the timing for it, trying to figure out all of these components, and we thought we figured out a good plan. Everyone was on the same page. And then COVID happened. And then LeBron James asked us to move it up. And I just remember us all looking at each other and we were like, it's not done yet. How are we supposed to move it up? It's not done yet. Um, and we figured it out somehow. And that was the craziest few months of my career, the hardest so far. I'm sure that there's going to be more difficult moments in the future, but gathering everyone at ESPN and being like, this is it. Like, this is our NBA finals. Like, this is the only thing that we're gonna have for so long until sports open back up. Because I remember the day the NBA said no more, and we all just looked at each other. We're like, what's gonna happen? What does this mean? And then to go to the moment where we're all sitting in that virtual conference room on Zoom, and they're like, so we're gonna move it up. We're gonna move up The Last Dance, and we're gonna do it, and we need everyone. Because I 'cause I'm one of the lowest on the totem poles, right? And they looked at me and they're like, "Whatever job description you thought you had, you're having a whole new one to get this thing on television." So
Wow.
seeing it from start to finish and seeing the reaction on Twitter and how it was just this huge live event, that wasn't live, but, like, felt like it, that was incredible to see everyone come together and have something that we just could all hope for and we could all relive. And I'm sure it was really cool for dads and sons and daughters and mothers to all sit around and be like, "I remember that." Like, I
Oh,
remember that happening. And, like, for me, I mean, I wasn't around to remember those years, so watching it all back and, having my dad reflect on what it was like, what it was like watching Michael Jordan in his heyday, was really cool. And it was one thing I will never, ever, ever forget. And then being able to celebrate virtually with my team when we got the Emmy, that was pretty cool too. So
so were you mad at LeBron James when he made that post?
I wasn't because I think it was the fire we needed to get it all set into motion, and we were able to, kind of build upon it afterwards and use it as, a little bit of a teaser. So I think it was great that he called it. It was when after the fact, after we got done with all of it and all of us just looked at each other and we're like, "Oh my god, we can breathe for a second." Not long, but we can breathe for
Mhm.
a second. And people were like, "All right, we want like a whole nother 10, like keep going. Like, there's so much more footage out there." And I was like, "You guys all need to stop. Like, we're not, we can't do anything else. Like, it's over. It's done."
So, like, 'cause I so I remember, I was there from 2013 to 2015. So this is primary. Well, LeBron's ending his run with the Heat. I was on Mike and Mike the week when he made the decision to go back to Cleveland. That whole week, we're sitting there like, okay, LeBron, when are you gonna break the news? Where you're
Mhm.
going? And I don't know if you remember, but it was LeBron and Melo were both free agents. Both of them had met with the Lakers. Melo met with the Bulls. So it's like, is he staying? Is he going? And I remember all the LeBron haters always saying, ESPN, ESPN, this company, we love LeBron so much. We love LeBron. And I
Yeah.
remember when he put out the tweet, it was like, man, they need to release that now because knowing people who kind of know how movies work, and LeBron does, he's produced television or direct
Mhm.
produced television. So I guess his thought process was everything was done. Just go ahead and hit play.
Yep.
And he probably, and I think that he probably wouldn't have made the post had he known that a lot of stuff wasn't done. But what was some of the things that you got a chance to do on the project? And I guess to say you said job description changed. So what was you
Mhm.
initially supposed to do and what did you end up doing?
Yeah, so my job description is, it's mostly supporting the executives. So I'm an assistant for them, and I help them with all of their the littlest tasks to the biggest tasks. I'm there as their support, whatever they need. I help it get done. I help them communicate with their team and make sure that I funnel any questions, I funnel anything that they need from them to their team, and likewise, vice versa. But when quarantine really switched, and then The Last Dance happened, we it had to be all hands on deck. So I most obviously it was an external production company. So they were the ones that had to really kick it up into full gear. Jason Hare and Mike Tolan and SD and everyone had to really get the production done. But we had to make sure that ESPN across the board was in alignment, and all of the content integration was was being funneled to all the different departments. I mean, but I feel like a lot of other people don't know how ma- obviously how massive of a company it is, but how many different departments we have, and how the communication between all of them needs to be fluid. It needs to be in alignment, because we have so many projects happening on so many different sectors. So making sure that another sector has what they need, the excerpts, the trailers, the right information, has all of our archival content that we've been able to collect over this production. We had to make sure that they had it, and we had to make sure that everyone was in alignment, and that the people that were doing the Facebook lives leading into it had everything. Sarah Spay and Cassidy Hubert, that they had everything that they needed. That SVP had everything he needed for the post interviews with everyone that he had. That people were able to have ample time to actually watch it, even though the episode might not be coming until the week before the episode for the following Sunday. We had to make sure that all of our talent were had a chance to see it before it aired, so that they could promote it properly. So it was a massive production.
Did you have to go into I don't forgot which building it was, but did you have to go to the basement to get a lot of old tapes, and go into the North Campus to get a lot of tapes for this? So I guess
I never had to go to North Campus, but we
okay.
had to request so many tapes. Like it
And how are
was
you
the
doing that virtually?
VHSs. That's a good question for Derwin.
Okay.
Derwin is incredible. I have no idea how he did it. He
Mhm.
must have, um, I don't know if they shipped him the deck thing to be able
The
to.
beta stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how he did it, or he must have gotten some sort of approval to be able to go into the office. under like certain hours with COVID guidelines following. But back then, I mean, I don't even think we had those in place yet. So
Mhm.
it had to be done a lot virtually, and we had to probably get our editor in there, 2 people from our department, because our department's pretty small. I mean, I'm a part of 3 different teams, but we have 2 pretty small departments that make massive content for our channel, for ESPN Plus, but also for all of original content that airs on television. So we're like a little train that could. I don't know how we do, but, like, we just keep moving somehow, and it's awesome, especially during this time when we've been just leaning on our original content across our platform, being able to see everyone, make the impossible happen. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when it airs, are you and your dad having watch parties? Um,
Yeah.
and how like obviously you're watching it from a different lens, but did you see all the episodes before we saw them? And did was there things that you noticed like, well, maybe we should have told this story instead, or were and I don't want to get you in trouble, but like ultimately, what was your favorite part of watching it? Was it watching itself or watching that along with watching Twitter?
Watching Twitter was fun. That was really fun. That was, I think, the thing that sparked me getting back into Twitter was because I was
Okay.
like, I need to hear all these conversations that are happening. Um, and I need to stop, but I've started to get a little defensive because I remember right after a lot of my generation was like, you guys need to tell it in order. Like, we need to go back and retell it right. And I'm not a Star Wars fan. I'm not a Star Wars
Neither am
fan, but
I.
I feel like I've heard countless times from people when I've tried to watch Star Wars once, and I should not be saying this because Disney is the owner of Star Wars, but, uh, they're like, "It's told in the proper way." Like, I'm like, "It makes no sense at all." And they're like, "It's told in the proper way." And I was like, "That's because you know it." And I think for sports fans who lived that, the way it was told was the way it needed to be told, right? But I understand people that are my generation that, are on Twitter, not looking at the television. They don't see the timeline come on the board for them. And so they're like, "Wait, what year are we in? Like what championship is this?" I get that. But I think seeing it from start to finish, because I remember I was in the room for one of the very first rough cuts that we received at ESPN, and I got to watch it with Libby, which was insane experience. And then seeing it now and seeing it air, and being able to do those watch parties with my dad and see his reaction. It was the best. FaceTiming him after one of the episodes aired, and he was either going crazy or he was, emotional, or he was whatever his reaction was. It was super cool. He's like, "That was awesome." I just remember him saying that over and over and over again. So it was really cool seeing it start to finish for sure.
Well, I'm gonna say this, not just because you're on here. I thought it was told perfectly. I love the parallels.
Hmm.
The reason I loved it because a lot of times when you're reading a book, you want to hurry up and get to the parts you're familiar with, right? So, for instance, I just read Daniel Bryan's Yes Journey, and it's about
Mm.
his journey to the WWE Championship. He's going through all the old stuff of his career, and I'm like, "Yeah, this is cool, but I can't wait till I get to the part when it's leading up to him winning that title." But the narrator, the book is written like it narrates the whole day. So the
Mhm.
first part is like the beginning of the journey of the day, whatever. So like seeing how that was told where you could get the beginning of the 98 season, but you also go to the beginning of Jordan's career, I thought was phenomenal.
And I think it's an important part, right? I think like
Mhm,
so many people judge athletes based off of the the biggest highs of their life.
mhm,
And if you don't know their full story and you don't know exactly how they got to where they are, yeah, it's easy to judge from that stance, right? It's easy to judge from the sidelines or, from your couch and be like, they're doing this all wrong, or, they're not giving it enough, or whatever these people say. And I think they deserve to be called out because if you don't know someone's story, like, who are you to judge? And that's across the board.
Mhm.
That's not just to sports. That's to all life. Like, you don't know someone and judging them based off of like one moment, especially a moment that like they're the ones that have to live with. Like no one else. Like we can be fans and we're gonna have to live with whatever our team does or does not do to achieve a certain title or whatever. But at the end of the day, like that's those people's livelihoods and that's their love. Like they
Mhm.
obviously love this game enough to work as hard as they had to work to get to where they are. And I think that moment with Michael Jordan and just saying like, I don't have to do this is something that should hopefully resonated with a lot of people of like these people and what we saw in the NBA this year of like, we don't have to do this. Like we're doing this because we love the game. We're not doing this to just be your guys' entertainment, to be whatever it is you need us to be. Like we're human beings and we can speak up. We don't have to stick to sports. We don't have to do whatever it is you want us to do to fit into your narrative. We are who we are and we're proud to be who we are and just leave it at that. Like let us say what we want to say.
I think it's incredible, one, for you to say that, but also how you were able to, at the beginning, you started this conversation saying that you wanted to tell the stories when it comes to sports. You enjoy the storytelling of the individual, and you get to tell one of that story. So I got to ask you this $1 million question: Is
Okay.
Michael Jordan your goat?
See, and you're asking the wrong person for that because like at the end of the day, I respect him. I
Hmm.
do. Um as I respect so much Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. I respect them and Steph Curry. I can't believe I just let him out of that. My dad's gonna kill me if he listens to this.
Well, you brought him in now. He's in now. You good?
He's in now. We're good. Um, I respect them,
Mhm.
and I think even the conversation right now that's happening around LeBron James is really important to have. Like, let's look at everything, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's not just look, and it's what I've been saying this whole time. Like, let's not just look at the number of titles he's won or, his stats, his ex, all of that stuff. Like, let's look at who he is. And I think The Last Dance gave us a really great opportunity to look at who he is, who Michael Jordan is. But it also gave us a really good opportunity to look at a lot of other players too on that team. And some of them, like some of their stories really resonated for me and really inspired me. So I think The Last Dance was bigger than that. I don't think Michael Jordan is my particular GOAT. I think he's incredible,
Mhm.
and I think he deserves respect, and I think he deserves that title, but I think mine's the good people, right? And Michael Jordan is a good person, but it's, like, the really, 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 really good people that, like, just aren't afraid to share their vulnerable side, and that moment that I just talked about, Michael Jordan, like, that was a moment that really resonated with me because it brought him to his vulnerable side, and I everyone has it, like, every single person has that, but whether they share it or not is their own personal choice. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's the closest I'm gonna get to it.
No, no, this is a good answer. One thing I did enjoy was, like you said, was telling everybody else's story. We heard the story of Steve Kerr, and he was. I've always respected him, and I've always respected his allyship. And then hearing the story of Scottie Pippen and everything. So I thought that was great. Um,
Yeah, Scottie Pippen and Steve Kerr, those were the ones that really, really resonated with me, and I respect. I respect them so much for what they've been able to do and where they are now.
Absolutely. Um, can you talk about Laura and how did y'all meet and how did
Mm.
you become a part of the Galvanized family?
Yeah, I just did a little like Zoom date with some of the girls a few days ago, which was really, really cool because I think Galvanize, for anyone that doesn't know it, is a program that Laura Oakman started, and her story of how she started it is really incredible. And the foundation of it, the genesis of it, it's all something worth looking into. But it's basically a group of women in the sports industry that just all support one another. There's training camps that she does with NFL, partnership with NFL teams, and they pair a young sports journalist with a rookie in the NFL league, and they kind of get the opportunity to explore telling telling their story, right? Having someone tell someone else's story, but also having the rookie tell their story. And getting those reps is everything someone needs to be able to really understand that their voice matters, that their story matters, and that they have the power to tell it. Like they're the ones that should be telling their story, right? Um, but also the network that Galvanize has in supporting women and having women support women um, resonates with me a lot. And so I first found Galvanize and Laura Oakman when I was a freshman in college. Um, and it came at a very pivotal moment in my life because I always was comparing myself. I was comparing the girls that I saw that were doing sports journalism, and I was like, how did they get there? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I knew no one in this industry before. So I knew I was starting from a different playing field, but I remember seeing some girls and just being like, scrolling to the bottom of their Instagram and being like, how old are you? Like, when did you graduate high school? When did you graduate from college to get to where you are now? Like, trying to do the math in my head, like, okay, they're this year's old. Like, I have X amount of years to like get to where they are at this age, right?
Hmm.
Um, and when I found Laura Oakman and I saw the program she was doing and how it was just like, we just need to support one another. This isn't about competing. Like this is about like lifting as we climb. That was something that really, really, really resonated with me. And it was something that I feel like I was on the pit, like it was like I say it's a pivotal moment because I was like just on the brink of realizing that like I just needed to throw my comparison meter out the window and just do me. And that really resonated with me. But at the same time, like I didn't have the money. I was starting to switch from thinking I wanted to be talent to wanting to be behind the scenes. My dad, in the middle of something, he, sorry, I totally lost my train of thought.
It's okay. You
Um,
said you was in the middle of talent. So, I
yeah,
think you
I
want to do
was,
talent and behind the scene.
yeah, yeah. I think I thought I wanted to do talent, totally transitioned over to like realizing I wanted to be a producer in features and documentary and um I there wasn't at that time, like, it didn't seem like there was a specific place for me in Galvanize, but the message really resonated, and I wanted to carry through with everything that she was putting out there. Like, I wanted to exemplify that in my own way. So, I just followed along on the journey for a really long time, and then, my boss, Brian Lockhart, kind of said to me when we were talking one day, like, "Hey, have you ever thought like maybe you could still be on talent? Like you could still do that even though you wanted to be a producer, even though you want to be a producer?" And I was like, "Yeah, like it's always been in the back of my head, but like I still feel like if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, and like there's nothing. I just got to keep doing me, and got to keep telling great stories, and that's what I want to do." Um, but she opened up in Jacksonville a camp that was along the lines of like a production and on talent, all combined, but mostly focusing on production. And I was like, that's the boot camp that I want to do. That's the boot camp I can get behind. Like, I want to do that. So I finally, after reaching out to her when I was a freshman, 5 years later, reached out to her and I was like, I think I want to do my first boot camp. And the world didn't let that happen. But then when she did the Who Not Do series, I was like, I want to do it. Like, I need something that is going to make me feel purposeful again. I want to connect with someone else in this industry that I don't know. And I just want to tell that story that she's putting out there. It's who you are, not what you do. Um, what you do is very important, but who you are is the reason why you're doing what you're doing. So I got to do that and I got to interview you, and it was so awesome. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it was something that got me out of my funk. Like, you can ask my dad, before I did the Who Not Do series, I felt very purposeless. I didn't feel like I was being an active member in my team. After The Last Dance happened, I was like, okay, like, what do I do now? Like, I know all of this stuff. I did all this stuff for you guys, but like, am I just supposed to shrink back down into, this other job description, this other person, and like not be involved in these conversations anymore? Like, I don't want that, but I also don't know how to find the confidence in myself to ask for that. Um, so I needed that Who Not Do series to show me, like, if as long as you put in the work, like, you can do whatever it is you want to do. Like, you have to work hard, you have to be show up as who you are, and um you have to do what's right, and you're gonna be fine. So after that interview with you, which is and the conversations that I had with and the people that I met through that experience too, the girls that are a part of the Galvanize sisterhood, it all went up from there. So I'm really, really grateful for it.
Yeah, excuse me, and I'm grateful for obviously the opportunity for you and I to meet and be able to create a
Mhm.
friendship. But just to, a lot of times it is like you said, always about what you do, what you do, what you do. So being
Mhm.
able to say, show the human side, and I really love the way it was produced, and my family really loved it and they really
Oh,
enjoyed it. Um, one of the things when we met, you said that the vulnerable conversations are where you feel comfortable.
mhm.
How has why is that? You know what I mean? And how
Yeah.
long has it been that way?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm so glad that your family loved it, because that's definitely that's amazing to hear, and it's definitely what I wanted, because I wanted to showcase you exactly as you are, who you are, the incredible person you are. So I'm really glad that they saw, or that I did that in some way, shape, or form. But I say the vulnerable conversations are like my home and like my base, because a few things, right? I think that when I was saying that to you, like, when my very first email to you took me a lot of time to craft, because I
Really, it's just
realized
me.
no, but it was really important to me. Like,
Mhm,
I wanted you to know that I wasn't just going to ask you for you to share your story and
mhm,
like put it in my hands if you knew absolutely nothing about me. But I also didn't want you to think that this was about me, because it wasn't. I mean, this was a really great opportunity for me, but I wanted you to have like a few little pieces of my vulnerable side,
mhm.
so that when you showed up for that interview, when we logged onto Zoom for the very first time, and I was asking you these questions about your daughter, about how you got to where you are, like what chapter of life you're in. I didn't know what chapter of life you were in. Like, I knew that social media, like, you're putting out all this content, but I knew that there could have been something that drastic happened in your life. Like, or, an important event just happened in your life that you weren't showcasing on social media, or I just knew there was more to your story than what I was able to research. And I didn't want you to feel like you had to show up and put on any sort of front. I wanted you to show up as who you were. Um, and I want that for even when I'm not interviewing someone. Like, I don't ever want anyone to have to feel like they need to show up and fake being happy, fake being, um, I don't know, like fake being successful, fake being any of these things that the society tells us we have to be in this world. And I just never want anyone to feel like they have to be that with me, because I really respect when people show up and like lay it all on the table. And I know there's a time and place, and there's a necessity for boundary, and there's a necessity for all of these different things for survival and for mental health. And I knew that meeting someone for the first time isn't always the place where you're going to lay it out all on the table. But I think code switching is something that I've talked a lot with my boss, Brian Lockhart, about. And I think, especially for people of color, women of color, when they enter their careers, they feel like they have to, because they have had to for so long. It's a mode of survival for them, and to keep their own sanity and to protect themselves. And I think that the people who now are like, screw that. Like, I'm gonna be me in every single room I walk into, and you can either love it, you can hate it, by all means. Like, you do what you have to do, and that's on you. That's not on me. If I'm showing up and I'm being me, exactly who I am, and I can't, like, go wrong then, right? Like, if
Mhm.
I have my own moral compass, if I have who I am on lock, no matter what room I enter, and whether it be my dad, whether it be the guy at the coffee shop, like, whoever it is, like, if I show up as me, then and I admit when I'm wrong, I leave my ego on the at the door and enter that room, and I say, "I'm gonna admit my mistakes, I'm gonna admit what I do not know, and I'm going to listen," which was something you really, like, were super honest about, and the advice you gave in our interview was, like, "Just listen." And that was something, I mean, every time I heard that when I was editing the piece together, the, like, "Just listen." It was like, yeah, like, just listen to people, and just hear them, like, leave your train of thought at the door, like I said, and just listen to them, try to put yourself in their shoes, even if, like, and try to put yourself in their shoes, but also know that you could never. Like, you could never be in their imagine what it is to be in their shoes, but try, and know you won't be successful, but try, and then show up from what you've learned from those conversations, those authentic, those vulnerable conversations. Show up into the world and carry that through, and follow through with what you know, what you believe. Um, don't don't leave that behind ever.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like I said, it's always, especially in this day and age and this time that we're in, that we are able to have those conversations. And like I told you before, it's definitely something that I appreciated. You know, I grew up in you know, I have friends of all types, all backgrounds. So for me, especially like when I got to ESPN, when I first got there in sales quality control, I was the only black
Mhm,
person in the department. And on that floor, we was in the basement of building 4. And at I think it was 4 or 5, but it was only like 3 me and 2 other black people that I remember who worked on the floor. And then when I went
mhm,
to screening, it was different, but I always appreciate that I was able to be myself. Naturally, is the code switching that happens naturally, but then
mhm,
once you get to know people, you kinda let your guard down, but it was never any judgment. And I've heard some of the horror stories of 2016, 2017, or what it was like being at ESPN there. Um, fortunately, I didn't have to go through that, but I've heard a lot of the horror stories. But
Mhm.
like you said, just listening and being able to, not being afraid to have these conversations, because at the end of the day, we all just want to live in a peaceful manner and have a peace of mind.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I totally, totally agree.
Yeah.
There's only growth that can happen from conversations that are authentic and real and, um, no ego involved, right? Like,
Hmm.
just showing up and talking about people's lives and talking about how they got to where they are. I think it's needs to happen more
Yeah, and I
for
think
sure.
and that's what makes you great at what you do, because it's something you're passionate about. You're not just out here, oh, I want to work in features because I like the way documentaries look, and
Mhm.
people can tell, like, okay, they're really just trying to understand who I am. Athletes, they can tell, they usually walk around with a guard up for many reasons, but they can sense who's real and who's not. Um, the title of the show is called Breaking Through the Glass Ceiling. When did you break through the glass ceiling and realize I'm doing exactly what I'm good at and am where I'm supposed to be? Obviously, you're going to break through more glass ceilings. You're going to have more moments when you're going to go to the next levels in your career, but there has to be a moment where you're just like, you know what? I'm good at this. When was that moment?
It's actually really, really crazy that you're asking me this, Brian, right now specifically, because that moment was last weekend.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and it resonated with me. Like, I could tell that that was what had just happened, but it was really when I talked to one of my best friends and I shared it with her. I shared with her the experience that I had, and she said to me, she's like, "JC, I've never heard you talk like this before. I've never heard you have the amount of confidence that I have in you, in yourself." Um, and when she said that to me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is a moment that I know is going to be like a turning point for me in my career and that I'm going to look back on and be like, I can do this." Like, I knew at that moment that I could do this. I could make a career out of this 1000% without a doubt in my mind that I was where I was supposed to be. My dad texted me right before and like said, "You were born for this." And I think that I think I believed it, but I think looking back after I had done it and rereading it was like, whoa, like I think I am. Like I really think I was born to do this. Um, no matter what anyone else says or like whatever, I welcome criticism. I welcome feedback like no other. I want that. But at the end of the day, like I have to know now moving forward that this is me and this is what I want to do and this is what I was meant to do. Um yeah, it was really 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 cool. I directed and produced my very first segment for my ESPN Plus original content team. It's America's Caddy. It's a show that airs in partnership with the big major tournaments. So the Masters edition, episode 2 is going to air right before the Masters, and I was able to produce 2 segments for it, and thankfully, I was actually able to be there in person following COVID guidelines, protocols. I was able to be there in person and really get my hands in it all, so it was really cool.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I know I've taken longer than intended. I mean, you had great stories. This has been great.
I feel like I talked a lot, so I'm sorry about
That's
that.
no apologies. This show is about you. So I'm happy. I definitely believe a lot of people will be inspired listening to this. And I really appreciate you coming on to share your story. Can you let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, thank you for that, Brian. I appreciate it. You can find me on my Instagram. I think that's where I'm most vocal, most I post the most there. So that's at JC Jaycie Schenone Schenone. So that's my Instagram handle. And I think it's actually the same for my Twitter. I might have like a underscore in there, but again, not the most. I don't use Twitter the most, but it's somewhere you can find me as well.
Yeah, JC, I really appreciate your time. Happy that we could flip the script and
Me
I
too.
could get the
I
chance to
appreciate
interview
you.
you. And I appreciate all
Thank
your
you.
support. Seriously.
Always, always. I'm so excited to see everything you produce. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for having me on. Again, I'm so honored that you asked me to do this, and I appreciate it a lot.
No problem. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this week's episode of Breaking Through the Glass Ceilings. Brian H. Waters signing off. I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with JC. Just very inspiring. She's somebody I definitely encourage you to follow up, as she is producing awesome content on ESPN Plus. Next week, I bring on a mentee of mine, a guy who is an author, and that is Devin Ashby. Devin recently wrote the book PG vs. Moco, a memoir of high school football in the shadows of the nation's capital, those counties being Prince George's County and Montgomery County, Maryland. So make sure you check that out. Folks, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Let your friends know about it. I highly appreciate it. Pass the word. Also, check out the uncomfortable conversations that I have. Till the next time, folks, remember, do not let anyone set up a ceiling you can't break through. This podcast was recorded and edited by B Waters Productions. The music by Hypno Beats. Make sure you follow him at Hypno_Beats with a Z on Instagram.